Welcome to the Suncoast In-Depth podcast. I'm Brett Watson. With me is Ricardo Aviles and Dr. Troy Doucet. We're talking about the last chapter of the Universal Christ. We're finally here, fellas.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. It's a sad day.
Kind of is, yeah. And it kind of isn't. It's been a long journey. So this chapter is called Beyond Mere Theology, Two Practices. And it may be the most important chapter. Mm-hmm. I know that pretty often. That happens a lot with books. But the reason that I say that is this is actually about practice, and he even gives a nice tool for practice.
No, it was a perfect way to wrap up the book.
Mm-hmm. Did you read the whole meditation that he put in there?
Yeah, the meditation and the love on love story or whatever.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
at the end, which was great.
Yeah, which is kind of a
love after love
tack on. Yeah. What do you guys see as your practice? Just to kind of put a face on what we're talking about when we say practice.
Like practice of spiritual practice,
spiritual disciplines.
It's like meditation, obviously contemplation at particular places that are familiar to me, to connect with God. You know, the beach, of course, is always. I try to get there at least once, hopefully 2 times a week. And of course, the beauty of it is it's obviously relaxing to be out there, but it's much more than just being in a cool place. It's really like contemplating life, where I am, what God's trying to speak to me. And so those practices of meditation, contemplation. But I also find a spiritual practice of just reading in and of itself is something that opens my mind to new horizons of what's possible. Mm-hmm. And I read theology, I read philosophy, but I get Richard Rohr's meditations each morning that I read, and those have become a type of practice as well. But it's always putting feet to it as opposed to just saying the abstract sort of analysis that he talks a lot about. Yeah. It's really just.
And you have a gift this way, I would say a spiritual gift. You're a people person. It comes easy for you. Mm-hmm. You're not introverted at all, it seems to me. Mm-hmm. You may have a side to you that I just don't know about, but well, you're shaking your head.
No, he's 100% an extrovert. I don't know.
Yeah. Seems that way anyway. Yeah. So, and I would see that also as a practice. You're very intentional about connecting with people, and it's something I appreciate and admire.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that stuck out to me when kind of finishing up this chapter is he mentions that he spent, I think he said 30 or 35 days in silence and solitude, and just kind of in meditation and reflection in preparation for writing this book, which I definitely don't do enough of, spending time just in quiet. And it definitely challenged me more to do that. And that's one thing I've been thinking about for a while, because one of the byproducts of deconstruction was it definitely affected my prayer life, in the sense that I'm what is this? What am I doing? Who am I praying to? Mm-hmm. And, I had to kind of re-envision what that prayer time looked like. And so just actually seeing the value of prayer and contemplation, in the sense that you're alone. You're not distracted by, TV or your phone or even your family. You're just in that moment. And it is scary sometimes, because your mind kind of wanders into places that you don't really necessarily want it to go. So you quickly re-distract yourself.
Even though that's one of the values of taking time like that. Yeah,
so but I could see the hesitation where a lot of people don't. I can't remember what were the two options, but it was either spend 10 minutes or 30 minutes in silence alone, or I don't know, it was scale a tall building, or something really, really difficult and scary. And most people chose to do the opposite.
Really?
Chose to not spend time in silence and not in reflection, because it's difficult.
Interesting.
But I have been spending more time especially when I have big decisions in life, or things that I need to reflect on. I have this time in the mornings. I get up before the rest of my family, and just the house is quiet, and I just slowly kind of get ready for the gym. And I just take that quiet time, and all the way to the gym, I'll drive in silence. I won't listen to a podcast or music. I just kind of use that as my thinking time, and reflection and contemplation. And it's amazing, like kind of the things that I'll work out in my head or reflect on in that moment. And one of my the only distraction I do have is every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, my little London will come out because she hears me, get my water bottle together and all that. She'll come out, she'll give me a hug, and she says, "I love you," and then she goes right back to bed every single morning without fail.
No way, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really, really a sweet moment. And so it just starts off that reflection perfectly, with like a thankfulness for my family and my life, and
in a way being loved on by the Christ.
Exactly.
That's right.
Now that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So it always brings a smile to my face. But that is a perfect way to wrap this whole thing up, because this is a thick book as far as theology and ideas, and it's I've really enjoyed it, and having each week to kind of dissect the reading and understand and contemplate like what is being said. I want to hand this book to everybody I know.
Really?
Yeah, it is. It was really fantastic.
Yeah, it's good stuff for sure.
Yep.
I have I have my practice. I did a prayer walk, this morning. I actually went out to my car because Susan was unusually loud this morning. I can usually get past any distractions. I don't know why I couldn't this morning.
Yeah.
So I actually sat in my car for a while. And then I do this thing at night that maybe is a little weird, so I don't talk about it too often, but
nothing like a podcast to talk about weird stuff.
Yeah, right. I do this thing where I breathe the name. This is something that Richard Foster has talked about. I don't know if it was in this book, but I know I've read it.
Richard Rohr?
Somewhere. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's taking the name Yod-He Vah-He and breathing in on the Yod and the Vah, and breathing out on the He's.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a nice rhythm.
That's cool.
And keeps your mind from, being distracted, and get you in a place where you're more open. And so I do that every night. Sometimes I fall asleep. Sometimes I see things in my mind's eye.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because like these ancient writers and these Stoics and all these people prayer and meditation has been around forever.
Probably as long as people have been
Exactly.
around. Yeah.
So it's really cool to see that this practice that has been implemented from the beginning. Now we can actually like see the benefits of it. Like we can actually study it from a scientific perspective. Yeah. You see these brain scans of people that practice prayer and meditation, and it unlocks this new, there's actual changes in the brain that we can observe.
Brainwave patterns.
Exactly.
And stuff. Yeah.
It's really unbelievable that, the ancients were onto something, and they knew it. They could feel the biological effects of the change. Yeah. But, now we can empirically prove there is something that's happening in your body when you do this.
Yeah.
And when you take a book like this that has so many deep theological ideas and paradigm shifting outlooks, it's a really good practice to contemplate on these and pray on these and meditate and really hope to hear from God and just really take that time.
I can meditate away knots in my muscles, just to self-prove, that it has a physiological effect.
Yeah.
But the studies that have been done on what they called Olympic level meditators, it didn't matter if they were of Eastern religious persuasion or Western or no religious persuasion. They had unusually high and consistent gamma wave activity in the brain. So odd, so different from the average person that they asked them, well, what's that like? And the best they could come up with that I remember was, it's a very spacious life. That's pretty
cool.
wild, right?
Yeah.
That's a really cool response.
Yeah. It's very spacious.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's powerful stuff. It really is. It's life-changing, powerful. So, and it's something that the church, especially in the last 500 years, I guess I'd say, has really neglected in terms of passing on those practices to
Right. Well, I think it was just
Christians.
redefined, like prayer was redefined into something else. And then if you use the word meditation, I remember like when we did the original Hawkins Road Festival, we had like a meditation tent.
We had a meditation walk too.
Yeah,
that I
and
put
people
together,
were like upset about the fact that we were having a meditation because it was taboo. It's like this, like, oh, this is a different religion. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you say contemplation, that's a little better, but they're the same thing.
I think that's why Richard uses that word so
Contemplation
much. Contemplation
instead of meditation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really do. I don't know if I just came up with that on my own or if that's something that he actually said as his reasoning, but it's really just another word
Right.
Yeah.
for the same thing.
Yeah, it was a neglect of the embodied experience, 'Cause 500 years ago, 600 years ago, you have the rise of Renaissance thinking, Enlightenment thinking, which elevated human rationality, like our ability to think, reason. Science is on the rise, and scientific experiments, right? Observation. And the body becomes recaptured as this evil thing, right? This thing that can't be trusted, like sensory experience can't be trusted. It can be fooled. It can be manipulated, which is true. Like these are all true things.
Can become irrational.
That's it.
Yep.
It's the brain is the necessary filter of reality to make sense of it. And so this is where you see the rise of apologetics in Christianity as opposed to embodied visceral experience of the Christian faith.
Yeah.
And so that's the neglect and then there was all sorts of scriptural evidence, so to speak, that talked about the flesh versus the spirit, and the spirit became reason, the flesh became the embodied experience. And so that's why we lost those practices of even just the genuflecting movements of the sign of the cross. Like,
Body prayer.
Yeah, the smell of liturgy, right? Those things were not just to seem spiritual.
No.
Those had embodied effects, like you said. If we would have had gamma ray penetration, whatever, to look at the brain back then, we would have seen that all of these elements of the liturgy within church, constituted effects on the body that were deeply positive in its spirituality. But now it's just, how do we make sense of what we believe became the most important thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to, how do I experience what I believe? And so that's the rub, and that's what we feel the effects of that, and that's the rise of evangelicalism and conservatism, fundamentalism. And so, yeah.
And at least I would say that, look, the Enlightenment and the rise of rational thinking had a lot of positives to contribute. We needed it because that same time period before the Enlightenment was filled with all kinds of weird, superstitious crap too. Was there more experiential spirituality? Yes, there was. But not always the right kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabricated, superstitious nonsense is not the same.
Right.
It's a good counterfeit though.
Overall net positive.
Overall net positive for
Right.
rationality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. But like we do as humans, we kind of go to the polar end of something before we swing back to the middle, And I think that's what we are beginning to experience. I just heard yesterday, I think it was Anita talking in the office, and she goes, such and such church has on their website now that they're progressive. And I thought, what? I mean, this church was not progressive at one point. But obviously what's happened there is they've gone through some kind of deconstruction and reconstruction.
Yeah.
And now they're just admitting it. Experienced a big split over it.
Yeah.
But from what I hear anyway.
But I also see for the people that have run away from religion and run away from this idea of God, this running back to some sort of spirituality.
Yeah.
You know, I'm seeing it more and more.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely, and hopefully the church can meet them in the middle.
Yeah.
On their way back. If we can be the leaders in that, and other churches can step up and realize the damaging effects of their theology and the unchristlikeness of their theology sometimes. I hope that they can do that, and I hope that they can see, like, there is a desire and a need and a want for most people to have some sort of spirituality, belief in God, believe in higher power, belief in connectivity to one another and overall good.
Yep.
I just hope that we can meet them there, you know?
Yeah. Do you feel like that because you feel that Christianity specifically has something valuable to contribute?
I absolutely. I think
that walk?
the message that Jesus laid out and that we try to articulate as clearly and honestly as we possibly can. I mean, I tell you this all the time. Jesus can save the world. His message can save the world.
Yep.
And our world desperately needs it.
Yep.
And not the Jesus that fundamentalism has created, but the true teachings of Jesus. It absolutely can change the world. The Spirit of Christ can.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It just so happens to be that's what we call them.
Yeah.
But like, this is absolutely can change the world. I truly and wholeheartedly believe that.
Yeah. And I think the Spirit of Christ, as you called it, it shows up in a lot of different forms. You know, I do. This may just be my own bias, you know, but I do feel like Christianity is uniquely poised to be a universal religion. And does that sound crazy?
No.
Or Rohr has said that too,
Yeah.
in so many words. And the reason that I think that isn't so much because I think that it's not so much wrapped up in the idea of a universal Christ, like this book has promoted, but it has something to do with that. But because Christianity also has has the potential for good structure around all of that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe,
What do you mean structure? What do you mean?
Well, not structure in terms of institutional Christianity so much, but the practices that have come down to us, you know, the lived experiences that you were mentioning before. Not that I think you have to go back to old liturgies and so on, but I do think that it would be worthwhile to incorporate modern versions of those experiences, even in the corporate setting, you know, where everybody's gathered together on a Sunday. I thought about asking Larry, hey, what do you think about doing like the Holy Week, doing a Suncoast version of Holy Week, you know, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, maybe even a Saturday vigil, prayer thing, and then Easter.
Yeah.
I never did talk to him about it, but maybe next year.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But, to incorporate some of those things, like we have done some of those things looking at the corporate scene, right? We did the thing at not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before that.
Yeah.
Where we had the different aromas coming into the room.
Oh, that was like...
Was that 2 years ago?
No, that was like 4 years ago.
Was it really?
Yeah, Sentimental Christmas, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, So, it's not that we haven't done things like that, but I do think that those hold some value. I don't know. Maybe those things are more prevalent in other religions and I'm just not aware of them. But it seems like
I think there's some value in, finding that balance, right? Like the charismatic movement. Like they struck a chord with felt needs of people by offering, hey, I'm going to come to the front if something I said in this sermon struck you, resonated with you, whatever. Come, I'll pray with you. Right? And people felt like that need, right?
Yeah.
Like that was for me.
That just brought me back.
Yeah, for me that was a very important moment, right?
Yeah.
But that moment could be manipulative, right?
Sure.
And anyone come, as opposed to like keeping it pretty authentic. Like here's what we're doing, whatever. But those are spiritual practices, right? Those are like standing in agreement with someone, saying, "Hey, I'm here, I'm praying for you, thinking of you, whatever."
And even at Suncoast, we do that. We just don't do that in the service. You guys make yourself very much present in the grand hall so people can come up to you and say, hey, I really need prayer about something. And bam, you're ready, you're available.
Yeah.
I think that is
sometimes they do.
Yeah, I think that is the uniqueness. I see you guys praying with people all the time. Like it is something that is practiced. It's just not within the service itself.
The way I see it is like there'll always be value for like cheerleaders on the side of the ball games, right? They remind you, like, even if the team is down, keep going. The boys, we can't just stop play. And for me, that's like during worship time, like, the band is focused, right, on the music at hand. But having those interludes of someone, like the transitions you guys have been like super powerful, dude, where you go, hey, this next song, like, I don't care if you're here, we want you to know God loves you. Like, just having that interlude of what is a spiritual experience and practice of worship to remind people, hey, here's why we're here. And for me, it's not even a reminder. It's just an awareness, an awakening again of why that you're here, and encouraging people, hey, if you want to lift your hands, if you want to sit, doesn't matter. But get into a place where, you can.
Yeah. For some, it's both, right? For some, it is a reminder. They've been there before. For others, it's just an awakening.
And I think this is proof too that, for anybody that's on this journey, we're on this journey too. We're still trying to figure out, like, what does it look like? What does a post deconstructed religion and spirituality look like? Yeah. And we're still trying to figure it out.
We're in the midst of figuring that out.
Yeah. Like we're like, because if you would ask me a few years ago, I would have said prayer's pointless. And now I don't believe that. Like, I truly believe there is just even thinking about somebody coming up to one of you guys and saying, hey, this is the thing I'm really struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're now sharing that it's a confession, which hugely valuable to confess something. Yeah. And then you're sharing the burden with somebody else. And like, I don't know about you, but anytime somebody prays with me, I feel better.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that happens. I instantly feel better. It's like that burden is now shared with someone else. And
maybe that's a lot of it.
I think it is.
And if you take seriously, Richard's notion in this book, then you have this opportunity when you take the time with someone like that to be Christ to them. And maybe that has something to do with them feeling better, Yeah. It's just all important.
And it doesn't have to be like super deep, man.
No.
But the kids went back home last Sunday, and I knew I'm in 7-Eleven with Asher and Adelaide, getting them snacks for the plane ride. And Asher just kind of had this, like, something hit him. And I knew, like, he hit the wall. Like, the realization, I got to go back to Texas. And I just put my hand on his back. I was like, you okay, buddy? And he's like, I don't want to leave. And I said, no one here wants you to leave either. But it's what has to be done. And he got in the car and hugged me. And I knew, I told Esther, I said, he's not going to go to school tomorrow. Like, he's going to miss. And he did. And I called him and I was FaceTiming with him. And you could just see his face, like, was just washed. And I was like, okay, bro, let me give you some insight. And I spoke with him, and he encouraged him, like, you got to go to school. You have to stay on the up and up of these things. Like, time is going to fly. This is going to all pass. And then you'll be able to get here. Like, just stay the course, man. And I do Jocko Willis's thing especially with Asher. Like, my number one rule, if you learn anything from Dad, is that don't do dumb shit. Like, just don't do dumb shit. And what you did today was dumb shit. Because now I got to talk to your mom about it and this and that. And I hung up the phone, dude, and I lost it. Like, I just broke down. Shaking and just crying. And comes my wife. She's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. And that's all I needed.
Yeah.
That's all I need. And then I went to the gym and lifted heavy stuff.
But your point is that little
thing
act
just,
on Esther's part,
going to be okay. You
Yeah.
have to remind yourself of that. And it's one of it. You read the word remind. How many times does the word remind come up in Scripture? Mm-hmm. We forget, dude. Even when it's in front of us, we can forget that God is good all the time. And like I said Sunday, like, he doesn't love us because of anything we've done, but because of who he is or what he is. And we need those. And for me, that's her spiritual practice, is she knows my heart stays broken, and she has to constantly remind me, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me focused, keeps me going, is to know that I got you guys in my corner, that I could pick up the phone, call anybody and go, I'm freaking struggling. And you guys won't go, hey, man, it's a bad time. I know you're going to go, tell me what's up. And I could tell you. And it's not like you're going to try to set me straight. You're just going to remind me of something. It's okay. They'll be here in a couple of weeks, right? Yeah. Help me refocus and move on. And I think that's what we're called to do. Like, that's what we're called to do. And Christianity has gotten off on this tangent of wanting to see all these, charismatic signs and wonders and healing of cancer and all these things, which, great. But Jesus is like, the biggest thing is for someone to have a change of heart. It's not following a law. It's falling in love with God. And how do we do that without practice? You can't.
You have to have practice.
You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And the way I say this all the time, I say, if you can see the invisible, you can achieve the impossible, because it seems impossible to have a relationship with the creator of the whole freaking cosmos. But if I can see how, through practices, right? If I could see the invisible through meditation, contemplation, prayer, reading, encouragement, community, then I could achieve the impossible, and that is having a relationship with God. But it's not like this. You can't base that relationship on human interaction.
Not all of it, for sure.
Yeah. So, sorry, man, I ranted on
No,
that.
that was really good, man.
Everything you said is just dead on. It's all money, man. You can't have a relationship unless you have one, is another way of saying what you said, right?
Yeah.
And the relationship with God is different. That's important for people to hear than it is between you and another person. Mm-hmm. And it's part of being in relationship with God, but it's not all of it. And the practices that we've talked about in these podcasts those are the important links to furthering that relationship beyond what you can do through your relationships with people, pets, all that stuff. That is definitely part of it, but not all of it. So I guess that's where I would leave this one, is to really encourage people to step up their practice. It doesn't have to be complicated. I'll sit down at dinner whenever we go out with people from church or whatever, or lunch, whatever, and that they always look to the pastor to say a prayer, right? Sometimes I'll just start eating.
Just to mess with them.
Yeah. And then when they'll point out exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not just to be, scutchy or cheeky, but I'm usually hoping that they'll say something like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Yeah. Because they're always expecting some kind of complex, flowery, prayer of thanks. So then I'll just say, thanks, Lord, let's eat. And when they ask, which is more times than not, they'll say something, and it gives me an in to say, like, he knows all this, right? And you know that he doesn't know it because the pastor says something, or this is just really, truly a way to get yourself further and further down the road in gratefulness overall.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Living
That's
a grateful
really good.
life.
That's the way
That's
to look
really
at it.
good. Yeah, you show these extremes, and that was just like an example of like every time you sit down to eat a meal, you're going to do it 3, 4, 5 times a day. Just pray.
Yeah.
Just give thanks. And it was a good practice because it was a great reminder like, oh, about to eat. Let me
Yeah.
say thanks.
And I say that because it really doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
But you get in your house, your dog comes up and just loves on you, and even though they've been alone all day, they could be cursing you, but they don't. They just love you, right?
Yep.
Thanks for loving me, Lord.
But that's the benefit of disciplines. And I think that's where we threw the baby out with the bathwater. There are good disciplines within Christianity that we've kind of reorganized. Like you have to say a prayer before your meal.
Yeah.
So it's like if this thing that I have to do to be a part of this religion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like, no,
Instead
friend.
of a way to connect.
Exactly. It's just a reminder. It's a little stop sign
Yeah.
that says, hey, stop and just give thanks.
Yeah.
I'm about to eat. Let me
No.
give thanks.
And maybe it even helps for people to know that, the root of religion itself, we're fond of saying things like, it's not about a religion, it's about a relationship. And I get where they're coming from with that.
Yeah.
I do. But religion is just a word that means reconnect in essence.
it.
I mean,
That's right.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh,
To do
Ligere.
again. Legion
Yep.
is from, I think, the Latin.
We get the word
for
ligament.
Yeah.
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 Interesting.
Just reconnect.
That's
So,
right.
well, thanks for doing all these with me.
Absolutely.
I really do appreciate you guys.
It's been a lot of fun. I
It
really
is.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Great book.
We'll
Yep.
keep doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome.